You should be all set.
Okay, so 7 o'clock, we can start the public portion of the meeting. I don't have to call us to order because that happened at 6:45 prior to an executive session. So let's now start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please, everyone off mute and join me for this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Members present right now are myself, Kathleen Holtz, Ken Schoberg, Sean McAvoy, Rachel Ruggieri, Tina Mahotra, Margaret Stamatis. Liz Flogel joined briefly and is having technical difficulties. We expect her back. And Nora Gatos has prior commitments and is going to try to join us later this evening. Starting right up with the chairman's report. As you all know, the town meeting was this Saturday, and all items on the agenda went through to the referendum stage. So the budget that was approved by the Board of Finance will now go to referendum, as well as all of the capital items. On another note, with the Board of Finance and the budget, we received, myself and Dr. De Silva and Ms. Norton received a memo from the Board of Finance. I just forwarded it to you all prior to this meeting. I don't know if it's gone through yet. But I just wanted to make a few comments about this, what I think of as a strange memo. Strange in a few ways. Strange, first, that just a few nights before the memo came out, myself and Dr. De Silva and Ms. Norton were invited attendees at the Board of Finance where they discussed this memo, but they didn't discuss the contents of it or discuss it with us. They just discussed it while we were three names in their Hollywood Squares of the night, and then sent them the memo afterwards. The memo seems to take issue with a few different things. One, that a few days after the Board of Finance reduced our budgeted amount, budget request by 1.1 million, that Dr. De Silva sent in her correspondence to parents a note that said that the Board of Finance approved a budget that was $1.1 million less than our request. They also seem to take offense at the same thing being stated in the Ridgefield Press. And I'm at a loss as to why the Board of Finance would take issue with statements of fact. One statement of fact that was in the Ridgefield Press, which is not actually in their memo, is that while they expected our insurance savings to be around 1 million, they did choose to cut us by 1.1, and the quote from Board of Finance chair was, because the Board of Finance members thought that we could, quote, find more savings. So while they did cut our budget by an amount that they expected us to be able to find in insurance savings, they also cut it by a little bit more than that. And we're very clear in doing so in their meeting, but not clear in doing so in their memo to us, which seems to be a complaint that we stated what they did. I'll let you all read the memo when it does come through and come to your own conclusions. I just find it strange in many ways, not the least of which that they felt the need to send it in a memo instead of speaking to us directly while we were at their meeting. That's it for my chairman reports, and I'll send it over to Dr. De Silva.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan. It's a long night, so I'll keep my comments short. I also was at the town hall meeting on Saturday, and it was nice to have met most folks for the first time in person outside of this board. So it was a good feeling, actually, albeit it was a sunny Saturday. It was a good feeling to have met people in actual person. We have been busy, as you all know, with lots of different things, but I would say, if anything, the busiest part of our schedule has been the summer bridge program. And so the good news is that we definitely have some excitement across all three levels, for sure, as you probably would expect, the elementary most. So in order for us to plan and confirm parent requests requests for the Summer Bridge program. We will close registration on May 3rd, Monday, May 3rd. So families will have all of this week plus the weekend, but we're going to close May 3rd so we can get our heads around it, make sure that we have the appropriate staffing needs, facility needs, et cetera. Of course, we will let families know by ways of school messenger and social media of the like. But for those that are listening and haven't registered their children, we ask that you do so, and certainly do so by May 3rd. And so when I say big turnout, elementary, big turnout. So we are going to do our best. As we said, it was a good problem to have, and we have the problem. So now we've got to work towards a solution to make it not only, not only to achieve the outcomes that we hope to achieve, but really have kids excited about it all the way through. So that's the next stage of the work, and looking forward to keeping you updated there. On the math placement front, by now, families should have received the math placement letters describing the process in the course descriptions. We sent those out a couple weeks ago. We have sessions happening this week. We have elementary 5th to 6th is tomorrow at 10:15. Middle school 6th to 7th and 7th to 8th is Wednesday at 10:15. For those families that can't make it, it will be recorded. It's live streamed. Ms. Gillette sent out a questionnaire, a feedback form for families in advance. So any families who have questions, we encourage you to email those to us so that we can be sure that we answer those questions at those meetings. That the meetings will be hosted by Corey and the representative groups that helped facilitate the math placement process. And I think that's it for now. I know there's lots of other exciting things that will be shared out tonight, so I'll keep my comments short.
Thank you for that. I find it really gratifying to hear that so many students are ready to take advantage of what you were able to put together in terms of the summer program and helping them get back to normal. And that's just really, again, gratifying.
So
committees. I think we have just had one budget and finance committee since the last meeting. Is that right? Ken, you want to give us an update on the budget and finance?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Budget and Finance Committee, we're actually going to be speaking on some of that this evening when we get the report from Dawn.
All right. Any other liaison or representative reports? Rachel.
Good evening, everyone. So I was very proud to join the Education Advisory Committee for ACT here in Ridgefield. We had a meeting on April 6th, and our Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Corey Gillette, was also in attendance. The committee is led by Ms. Hillman, who is the Director of Education and Outreach for ACT. There are some amazing opportunities for students to be engaged in over the next few months. First, there is a virtual educational workshop opportunity. ACT of Connecticut invites students, teachers, and all interested members of school communities to join on Wednesday, June 2nd at 6:30 p.m. for a special film presentation of Stephen Schwartz's musical Working. ACT of Connecticut produced and presented this new version of Working, which highlights Ridgefield local workers as part of its 2019 season, and it was beautifully captured on film. This streamed presentation of the film show will be preceded by a virtual discussion with ACT's Artistic Director and Director of Production, Daniel C. Levine. Please email education@actofct.org for pricing information and to register. There are also two exciting youth performance opportunities at ACT of Connecticut this summer. The first opportunity is ACT of Connecticut's Summer Performance Camp. Timberland, July 26th to August 7th for 2nd to 5th graders. A brief description. Campers will rehearse and present a brand new clever musical written specifically for the Summer Performance Camp. Keeping in line with ACT of Connecticut's Into the Woods theme for this season, Timberland is a fun-filled children's musical incorporating well-known and beloved Broadway music and telling the story of 3 kids who are summoned to a distant planet called Timberland. in order to reverse a terrible curse and save Timberland's majestic forests. Campers will learn introductory musical theater skills, including beginning vocal technique, choreography, and improvisation. Additional theater activities and workshops will be incorporated into the camp schedule, including theater games and special guests. Please check out the ACT of Connecticut website. It is www.actofct.org/summer-camp for more information. And again, you can email education@actofct.org to register. The other opportunity is ACT of Connecticut's Teen Conservatory. It is a summer main stage musical theater intensive. So it'll be Into the Woods Junior from July 5th to the 17th for middle and high school students. And it's by audition only. So a description, just briefly, middle school and high school performers will have the opportunity to audition for and appear in a team production of Into the Woods Junior. ACT of Connecticut's artistic director, Daniel Levine, will be reimagining this classic Broadway standard specifically for the Teen Conservatory students. And the production will be directed by Daniel, and special guests throughout the 2-week rehearsal period will include ACT of Connecticut's music supervisor, Brian Perry, and others. Just once more, the website is www.actofct.org/summer-conservatory, and the email is education@actofct.org to submit an audition video. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Other liaisons and representatives? I think I saw Kathleen. Did you have a?
Yes, we had an energy task force on meeting on April 22nd. Basically, I mean, in short, we recapitulated the meeting we had with the Board of Selectmen, and we're talking about how we can to find a consultant and fund a consultant to help us with our goals. If many of you have been listening to Governor Lamont's hope and our president's hope that by 2030 that we really reduce emissions. So that was a lot of it. But I also wanted to, without giving a lot of detail, for the library, our Ridgefield Library, RACE, which is the Ridgefield Action Committee for the Environment, has 6 programs on Zoom. 2 have already happened. One happened tonight, which was quite exciting. I wasn't able to go because it's conflicting with us about making, but all of them are about making smart energy sources choices. So tonight was about putting solar panels on your home. But for the next 4 Mondays, just go onto the Ridgefield Library site, and there are Zoom about making really smart energy choices. And some of the people are on our committee, so it's really well worth it for every person in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Tina?
Just a really quick update. Our CCASA met last Tuesday. It was a really quick meeting. There were just quick updates on the Juvenile Review Board. It seems to be going well. There were updates on Compassionate Ridgefield, and we are still, as a group, brainstorming on ways how we can help community going forward.
All right, thank you. Sean?
Just a quick Ridgefield Prevention Council update. We had a meeting last week, and although it's late in April, April is the month for when you, what is it, talk, they hear you. So if you go to ridgefieldpreventioncouncil.com, go to events, and up top there's a little thing about underage drinking and having discussions with your kids. It is a useful site to take a look at.
For that, do we have any other liaison or representative reports? Okay, there being none, let's move right on. Approval of the February 22nd minutes. Do we have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of February 22nd, 2021 regular board meeting.
I have a second. Margaret, thank you. Any comments or amendments?
I have a quick, and I did not read it with a fine-tooth comb like some people do, but on the top of page 3, the second word in should be among rather than between. Just because there's more than 2 schools.
Good point. It's equity among schools.
Right.
Anyone else? Rachel?
Just really minor on the last page. It's the operating budget. It should be $72 instead of $73 at the end, I believe.
Oh, goodness.
Thank you. Any others? All those in favor of approving these minutes as amended, please raise your hands. Eight. Thank you. Okay, March 8th board minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of March 8th, 2021 regular board meeting.
Do I have a second? Ken? Comments or amendments? No one? Okay, let's move this to approval. All those in favor of approving, please raise your hands. And so unanimous again. Thank you. Those minutes are approved. Moving right on to the first discussion item of the night, update on RHS Counseling Department.
All right, so I will actually turn this over to our high school in just a moment, but it's been a number of years since we've had an update on counseling and the shift from guidance counselor to school counselor. So the counseling department's here to give an update since the last time they presented to you all, which I believe was just about 2 years ago. So I look forward to hearing the presentation along with all of you and the questions that you might ask.
I'm okay to go, Susie?
Yeah, I can't see you, but yes, you're okay to go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Jake Greenwood. I'm the high school principal. I have Scott Robert here, my counseling director, and he's going to run through the slideshow with you. We have an update, an overview of the counseling and an update to counseling. And also, I'm really excited to share with you some of the new initiatives that we have coming out of the department. Even though it was a unique year, to say the least, we certainly have not been sitting on our hands. Scott's been working really hard with the department and with me too, keeping me informed along the way. So we want to share with you an update as to where we are and where we're headed, and then see if we can take some questions at the end. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Robert.
Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you hosting us tonight, and I'm looking forward to give you an update. So if we can start right in, we'll go to the next. There you go. So I love this slide. This is a great place to start. We talk a lot about confusion about what's a guidance counselor, what's a school counselor, and this is a really great opportunity for us to highlight the differences. And so, when we think about guidance counselors, we think about those people that were in this role back when we were in high school. Today, that role has really grown a lot, and it's really shifted away from what was a much more reactive model and a model that serviced fewer students or a smaller population into what it really is today. And today's school counselors are proactive. They take on a lot more than just fixing schedules, and they really do aim to service every student in the school. So again, with a focus on academic, personal, social, and career goals, counselors work both individually and in small group settings. All right, Joe. School counselors are really data-driven is one of the highlights here. We do try to look at the whole child when developing and making plans with students. Counselors serve as case managers for 504 students. They participate in PPTs, and that really allows us to help advocate for our students. Coordinating homebound services is pretty intensive, time intensive. So we do try to, do all of these things. So our department itself is made up of 8 counselors plus myself. Counselors do stay with the students for their 4-year journey at the high school. We designed it this way in order to really help build a relationship between the counselor and the student. Building this relationship really allows for us to better serve students, especially when it comes time to start doing post-high school planning, when we get deep into the high school years. So, some of the ways we work with students, obviously in person, but sometimes we work on their behalf. And so, I like to think of, I don't like to think of when families get divorced, but I use that as an example for, how we might be sharing information, when there's a death in the family, things like that. And then obviously, indirect services, thinking about having conversations with teachers around things that they're seeing in the classroom, or helping to kind of put, the information that we're getting from multiple teachers together in really figuring out a picture of the students. So these next couple of slides really kind of highlight our current developmental counseling program. Right now, our program is, in a traditional year would be taught in a classroom. Obviously, this year we've had to kind of forego that. But what we've done in the past is had students kind of cycle through our classroom. And in grade 9, we've focused on things like transition and goal setting. And then if we move to the next slide, we can see that in grade 10, we pick up with continuing that goal setting and then moving into some career exploration. When we get to grade 11, we really start to focus more on the high stakes testing, the college search process, Naviance, things like that. And as we get into grade 12, we're focused on the college process in its entirety, and then really starting to transition kids for their move out. Like I said, in any other year, we teach these lessons in a classroom, but this year we've really shifted our practice. It's become much more about connecting with students this year, helping them manage the changes that they've been asked to really kind of endure, and helping them keep on track with their post-high school planning stuff. So with that, it's helped us really kind of shape our new plans. So we're really excited to announce that we're going to move into a new developmental, our new approach to how we deliver our developmental counseling curriculum. So starting in the fall, we're going to actually be in a position where we can add this to a student schedule. We're going to see it's going to actually be placed on a student schedule. We're going to focus on doing more seminar type sessions where we're going to focus on a particular grade level for a quarter at a time, having the opportunity to meet with students, hopefully 5 or 6 times. So we're going to start with seniors in quarter 1. They come in and it's college time right away. So there's a lot of pressing things that are happening. So we're going to start with them, really help them focus on the timelines, completing their forms, updating their resumes, really getting themselves prepared for managing the stresses that are going to come along the next couple of months. And then ideally at the end, we're going to have an opportunity to really focus a little bit more on the senior internship, which is something you're going to hear about later on tonight. So in quarter 2, we move to our freshmen. Again, time management, transitioning, 4-year planning. These are all just a few of the topics we plan on covering. The opportunity to see them multiple times is going to be really key in terms of helping us really start to build that relationship with them and make sure that they're comfortable in our building. So when we move into quarter 3, we start to well, in quarter 3, we're going to turn our attention to our juniors. At this point in time, we're really starting a deep dive into the college testing piece, using Naviance for college searches, and really thinking a lot about the senior course selection that's going to be happening. And we're going to focus on essay writing and then getting ready for the post-high school planning phase, which really picks up, hardcore in the spring. And then we're going to finish quarter 4 with our sophomores. And again, it's a deep dive into career exploration, some resume building stuff. We also felt like this was a really great time to do a review and remind our students about their digital footprint and social media and email etiquettes. So, in order to keep counselors on top of their game, we're going to be doing some professional development. Some of that professional development is going to include some DBT skills training that Liz has talked more about in the past. We've rolled this out with our other mental health professionals. We're going to start to roll out some of these skills with our counselors next year, and they're really excited about that. So on their own, these changes are a huge undertaking, but we're not finished yet. So we want to advance those slides. We're really excited about this. We're going to be launching a college and career center in the fall. This is a piece that's really been missing for us for a number of years. We're really excited about being able to bring a college and career center back to Ridgefield High School. The space is going to allow us to host college admissions representatives in an appropriate atmosphere, as well as really give the students the space to explore options that are other than college. It's been, a part of our program that's been missing for a long time, and we're really excited about it. So, as you can see, there's really a lot going on in the counseling department right now. We're really excited to have students back in the building, to be connecting with them again, and to really be able to make these changes that we really hope are going to help us deliver a much more consistent level of service for all of our students. So that's what's going on in counseling. So at this point in time, I guess we'll take questions.
So Liz, your hand first.
Sure. So thank you for the presentation. It's nice to see that you're thinking about the strategy for counseling across all the years. Just a question, do you have any metrics for success for any of these programs? I mean, what does good look like? What is our benchmark? What are we trying to do? How do we know if it's working and effective for our students, or something that we shouldn't do anymore?
I think the first metric is really the fact that we've really felt like we need more. We need to be doing more than we've been doing up to this point in time. Our past model has really been kind of a one-hit piece for them in terms of the developmental, the classroom aspect of it. And we have not really been able to be in a position where we've kind of, we've been hit or miss with students when they come into the classroom. If they come, they're getting, we know that we're delivering a good product. It's just that we don't feel like we're really hitting as many students as we really need to. And so this is really going to give us an opportunity to really do that on a much bigger scale. So I feel like that's really kind of where we're starting. We want to, like I said, I think the feedback that we've gotten in the past has been that some of the experiences have been a little inconsistent, and that, we wanted to try and do something that was going to make everybody feel like they were getting a better product.
So how will you know if they feel that way, though? I mean, will there be surveys? Is it
obviously,
meetings?
we're going to have to, include some exit surveys for the students as they kind of finish up their seminars with us. We go back and we kind of evaluate programs. We see what's worked and what hasn't, and then we start to make some changes as we move forward. I feel like this is kind of the first step there. We've kind of put a scope and sequence together that we think is going to be something that's useful and beneficial to students. And if the students come back and tell us that there are things that we're missing, or there are things that they would like us to see, we'll talk about, rewriting that and making sure that we're including those things.
So just one other follow-up question. Thank you. I'd love to understand what the benchmarks are, but will students be able to opt out of this time on their calendar if they don't feel it's of value or relevant to them?
So that's really not our goal. We are going to put it on there. We are going to ask them to come and to participate in this. It's really something that we feel is obviously beneficial and important to them. We do feel like it's an opportunity for us to not have to do this individually over and over and over again. Not that that's a problem, and we'll certainly reinforce it individually, but the opportunity to get students in a classroom working together is really, something that we think is going to bring a lot of value. This is a model that is not unique to Ridgefield. We're modeling it after some of the other schools in our DERG that have done a program like this. And, you know, they get a lot of benefit from it. And I think that, you know, this is something that, like I said, has been something we've talked about wanting to do for a number of years, and we feel like is going to help us really deliver a better product.
Thank you.
Yeah, Liz, if you don't mind, it's Jake. I don't know if you can, I just gonna hop in. Hi. And also, Scott can jump in too, but we have some professional development for the counselors coming in this summer too, in terms of working on the curriculum. So even though I think Scott's got a really nice framework for the topics, and again, not only based on what we know our kids need, but also by looking at the other DERG schools. This has been modeled successfully in other schools, where when you're putting these kids together in small groups to talk about, you know, common areas where counselors would have had to do individually, and now you can all get the same experience. It allows for more in-depth conversations when they are separate with their counselors, because they've gotten sort of the smattering of, this is how you make a Naviance account, this is how you log in, this is what you do with it. So you've used it, you've interacted with peers, you've done some small group work. So then when you go to your individual counselor, it's much more productive time. And you know, so it was fortunate enough to see it from the ground up in another district. And I really, you know, was kind of leaning on Scott, like this was a good direction to head into. And we did hire somebody to come in and work with our counselors this summer in designing the curriculum. And part of it certainly is, as you pointed out, you know, surveys and dipsticking the kids after each quarter on the usefulness of it. And I'll say, again, having lived it, that when laid out properly, the kids don't try to get out of it. They try to get into it, honestly, because they're seeing the value in the idea of, wow, you know, talking, you know, being able to ask questions of my counselor with other people around. You're hearing other kids' questions too. So it really was a useful program. So
Good. That's great. Thank you.
Other questions? Margaret?
Thank you. Thank you, Scott, for the presentation. It was informative to kind of see where the direction of the department is going. One of the questions I had is you mentioned a caseload in here of 200 students per counselor. Is that typical?
Yeah, it's about average for our DERG. You know, our numbers actually have you know, thankfully been coming down a little bit over the last couple of years, and you know, like I said, 200 is about average. It's a comfortable number. We, you know, I think ideally we would like it to be a little bit less, but not at the expense of a counselor. So.
And so thank you. And part of the reason I ask it is there's obviously a lot of stuff that the counselors are doing and now will be adding on to their plate. And one of the things I just wonder about is scheduling. So I think the class idea is great because it sounds like the alternative were the one-on-one meetings, and that was difficult for many, many reasons. So perhaps the class aspect does away with some of that. But I just wonder about availability of the counselors, if now they're going to be doing this, available for some of those responsive needs or some of those one-on-one meetings. Because I know scheduling, to be quite honest, has been a challenge for some students in the past. And I just want to find out how this might impact that.
Yeah, I think that, you know, ideally we see this as, you know, really, as Jake said, this is an opportunity to kind of get a lot of information out to these students. And then we really kind of envision more of a kind of a shift in the way counselors are working or using their time, I guess. You know, in addition to doing all these individual meetings right now, counselors are still also doing 504s, and they're doing college meetings, and they're working with, you know, all kinds of different things. Counselors are still going to be busy, but we do kind of think that this is going to help free up some time for them so that they really can focus and have some better in-depth conversations with students individually, you know, outside of these sessions.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, one last question. So again, I like how you've laid out the quarters for each of the different levels of grades. For the freshmen, I just wonder, I've got to assume, and I know you're the high school counseling department, but I'm hoping that as you talk about the transition stuff here, there's got to be some transitioning that's going on with the middle schools. I'm hoping before school starts. Does your counseling department get involved with that, or what does that look like?
So we actually, our counselors are going to meet individually with the 8th grade counselors. So they'll do some transition work with the counselors this spring. And then we do the big, obviously, orientation. And the truth is that when we really start up in the fall again, before we dive into the classroom with our seniors, we're going to make sure we have some kind of interaction with the freshmen as well, as we've done in the past. Obviously, we didn't do it this year, but we'll have, you know, an interaction with the freshmen, you know, because we just don't want to, it's not like we can't wait for them, you know, a whole quarter before we see them and meet them. So obviously we're going to go back to kind of doing what we've done in the past, which is to have some kind of an activity with them. So they'll have a chance to meet their counselor, get to know a face, and then, you know, and then obviously they can still schedule individual appointments. And so, yeah, we do a lot of transition work. We do a lot of transition work with the middle school around course selection and, you know, bringing students up. We, you know, this year instead of having that evening where we invite the 8th graders to come up and to see the elective fair and to hear the big rah-rah transition speech, you know, we put together a different presentation for them. We put together some short videos. We actually put a transition website together for them that really helps answer a lot of the questions about what they can expect when they get up here. And then, you know, we'll work with the middle school counselors this spring and make sure that we have a good handle on these students prior to their getting up to us.
Thank
And,
you.
you know, I have to say the middle school counselors have been fantastic in terms of, you know, taking our phone calls too when we when we have a question about something. So
We appreciate it. Thank you.
you bet.
Thanks. Tina?
Thank you. This was really informative. And this is just dovetailing of Margaret's question. You're talking about the current, you know, the freshmen. There's a plan for them looking forward into the next year of the quarters, but the current freshmen, obviously they have a very altered experience. And I've noticed, you know, they will be rising sophomores. They're the last part of the quarter. So are you taking that into consideration? Because their experience with the counselor, the whole department has been very different. I mean, I have a freshman, I understand, completely different. Of course, it's out of her hands. So I'm just hoping that you are taking that into consideration in the next year.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think we're going to have to do some different things or some things that we wouldn't normally do next year, really, because there have been a lot of students who just haven't, you know, felt like they're really a part of the school. And so I don't know what those things are yet, really. I think we'll have to talk more about it as a team, figure out, you know, what we want to do. But I think we're going to have to do things like that. You know, really making sure that everybody is comfortable has got to be a priority, and that they're feeling like they're really a part of the program and a part of the building has to come first. So, yeah.
And Tina, this is Jake again. Just want to hop in. It wasn't a part of this presentation because it doesn't come directly through our counseling department, but our advisory program starts back up again in the fall. And we've been already working, I've been working with Christine Hopkinson on, you know, what does that look like in the fall, you know, adding new lessons, revamping what we normally would have done, because we realized that, you know, we need every opportunity that we possibly have to connect with kids. So I think these two things, the developmental guidance and the advisory, you know, we're planning on dovetailing them where, you know, one's coming out of the counseling department, one's coming out of our student life department, but just varied opportunities in small groups to reconnect with kids as soon as possible. So just wanted to chime in on that one.
Thank you.
Kathleen?
I don't have a question. I have a comment as a parent who's been through it and through it the other side, even out of college, that I really appreciate this model in many ways, knowing, having had a self-reliant kid, that hopefully these sessions will create relationships for those kids that do not have daily or regular meetings with counselors. And therefore they will feel comfortable then seeking out the counselors when there are needs as they're going to college. So I hope that this will grow a relationship and a feeling that, oh, this is somebody I know and I will go to them. So I see that as a positive. I'm just saying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this.
Kathleen,
Thinking about it. I hope that works that way.
Kathleen, implemented well, that's ultimately the goal, is that kids have a direct relationship with their counselor, with their school counselor. They know exactly who to go to with the questions that they have around all of the different programs, beginning from freshman all the way through senior year. Ultimately, that's in that ability to connect with them in a different kind of way is we're hopeful that this shift to this model for next school year leads us down that path.
Thank you. I agree. I think it looks good.
I just have a question, a quick question on the College and Career Center. You mentioned it's been missing for some time. Do you
Sure.
know how long it's been missing and why?
This is year 21 in the district for me. And when I started, we did have a part-time college and career counselor who was housed in a separate, really a separate department. We had, back then our model was 2 college and career counselors and then this career counselor, 2 college counselors, I'm sorry, and this career counselor who were kind of, part of our program, part of our department, but were housed in a different area. And, I think at one point in time, our numbers dipped and I think that it kind of just faded away. And we really tried to take that into under our own wings when we changed our model and moved away from having these college specific counselors and really taking everything on in terms of, in terms of our numbers and our caseloads. And I think for a while, we've talked about trying to re-implement something like this, but we just really haven't been able to get it off the ground. And so I feel like every year Liz hears me say, we have to, I'm going to put my proposal together for a college and career center again. And every year she says, okay. And I think that it comes up in discussions and then it, for one reason or another, I don't think it ever materializes.
Are those budgetary reasons, time reasons, personnel reasons? What are the reasons that we haven't been able to put it together?
I think it's probably a number of things. I think that we're trying to service as many kids as we can, as best we can, and stopping and having to introduce a new model, even if it's reintroduce an old model, I think probably may not have been the most efficient use of time. And so I think we have a real opportunity here. And we're, really excited about the fact that, it's a need as well, I think. I think one of the things we've seen more recently in the last couple of years is more students opting to look at either taking a gap year or going into the military coming out of high school and before going straight into school. And so I think the need is growing more than it has in the past, and I think that was part of it too in the past, is that I'm not sure that it was as big a need as it is becoming again.
Yeah, Jonathan, it's funny, they always say there's an adage, right? There's nothing new in education, it's just cyclical. And I honestly believe, again, having been in a few different systems now, that's really what happened. It was a pretty robust model, you're talking, as Scott said, 15, 20 years ago, and sort of like fell out of favor as the nature of counseling turned one direction. And now that we're looking more holistically at kids and sort of breaking it down, talking to them more individually, intervening, getting to talking to them much earlier about career path, not just go to college, but like what happens next after you go to college? What does that look like? Then you're seeing schools revamping these college and career centers, putting these opportunities back in front of kids. And so we've had a space, but it was one of the things Scott and I talked about pretty early on, was moving it into a more visible space in the building, closer to the student center, so that we could do our college meetings there. Kids could really see what's going on with the college process more early, and then have resources there to talk about career choice related to college, not just go to college, but what does that really look like? And of course, you're going to hear about the internship program coming up, and that's a big part of that college and career. So kind of fitting all these pieces together, hopefully in a cohesive unit, being the developmental guidance, the college and career center, the internship program, really looking at a transition program for our students.
If I could just add one really, really small piece, if we look at really 9th grade through senior year of college as like a different view, the other piece to all of these designs, whether it be the developmental counseling, college and career center, the redesigned senior internship, and the evolving role of school counselor, is that it's more natural to what post high school life is like, as kids have to access resource on secondary ed campuses or through other vocational, some of them through the military. They have to have the ability to engage in these type of conversations, because this is really much more of what the model looks like after high school, especially on 2- and 4-year college campuses or through vocational or tech schools. So that is a big influence. That's really, as with much else at the collegiate level, that has been pushed down. this is another thing that's worked in a lot of places because it mimics that model.
Thank you. Tina.
Just a quick comment. I did have friends who went through the high school when this model was there, and they've always talked fondly of it. I mean, I was talking to somebody who was just texting me while this meeting's going on, and they just said they're glad this is back because there are more and more kids who are looking for alternative methods, gap years, military school, they want a career in arts or music. So just different from the traditional liberal arts, the colleges, the way we think. So I think it's great that you're doing that. That's it. I'm just glad that you're looking into the future. You're just changing this whole talk because there are children who we're probably not going to traditional college as the world is evolving around, changing and evolving around them. So thank you for that.
Any other questions, comments? No, I think that's it. Thank you very much for that presentation. We look forward to seeing the implementation.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next item up is the alternative high school / 18 to 22 program spaces.
Yep. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Hanaway, but ultimately what our goal is tonight is to provide the Board of Education an update on program space needs for the 18 to 22 program in the alternative high school. By now, hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to read the memo that was included in your packet. And so I'll let Dr. Hanaway summarize that briefly, and then we'll take any questions that you might have.
Sure. So I don't have a presentation, so I'm going to try to be succinct with my points because, I'm just talking here with no visuals. So essentially, I know we presented most recently about the alternative high school program with Angela King. I'm not going to review the contents of that program. Our 18 to 22 transition program, it used to be 18 to 21, this year starting 18 to 22. So both programs have been housed off campus traditionally, as is typical because of the access to the four components that were listed on the top page of the second page of the memo. So an essential program to essential components of all alternative high school and transition programs that you would see typically across public school districts in Connecticut is that they have the capacity to meet students' needs, whether they be instructional, social, emotional, or physical, that they're able to take in different or more groups over time flexibly, whether that be more groups from within district or more students from outside of district for tuitioning in, which is not something we do right now, but something that we're very open to in the future if we're able to. That they're near a downtown location so that students can access a community easily for vocational and social purposes, and that they're distinct from the high school. So we primarily have an immediate issue with our 18 to 22 transition program that has been historically housed in the Veterans Park campus in the combination of a portable that's connected to the Veterans Park school that's not being used by them at this moment, as well as a portable classroom, as well as the barn space, which is owned right across the parking lot by the Boys and Girls Club. We've used the combination of these two over time. We do not have access to the barn this year, and we've been notified that we will not for the foreseeable future due to COVID, but not also I think due to whatever use the Boys and Girls Club is going to expand using that space. So that is our most pressing immediate issue. We've had this program at the high school this year because of COVID and the ability to have a nurse on site and immediate availability of everything that we've been doing this year. But really, we should move on next year out of the high school. It's limited the students dramatically as far as a lot of the components of their program related to the community, which worked this year because we weren't going out into job sites as much, but all that's going to change. These students have started to transition going out into the community more because there's a lot more reason that it's safer to than it was a few months ago. Into next school year, it's going to become really difficult for these students to access their vocational community goals if they're not closer to a downtown. So the tethered, I'll say, issue with that is the alternative high school space, which we are outgrowing. I have heard it described as a one-room schoolhouse, which in all intents and purposes, it is. It's a large space in which I think when in its inception in 1994, it was meeting the needs of a small group of kids who were typically all taking the same classes. Well, one of the benefits of our evolving is that we're offering, we want to make it an equitable experience for kids at the high school. We're offering a lot more different types of classes, whether that be cores or electives. And so what we're having is a lot of sound and space issues, distraction issues, behavior issues as a result of that. And so what we're really considering is, could we figure out a way to maximize the best location for both of these programs at the same time, which has led Susie and I to a very thorough tour of the town of Ridgefield, neither of us being residents, in learning many, many, many spaces, and speaking to lots of folks who know a lot more about the town than we do. But we don't have a land of a site for either verified at this moment. We're not being asked to leave Ballard Green, where the alternative high school is. And could we hobble along next year? Yeah, we could, absolutely. Like, we're going to meet student service needs. We're going to do what we have to do. But it would be a challenge for sure.
So just if I can add on, Dr. Hanaway, thank you for summarizing without slides. That's not that easy. So while we're considering programmatically what we'll need to have available for our students in 18 to 22 in terms of space, the reason the parallel of the alternative high school is there, of the quote unquote one-room schoolhouse, is because in theory, the 18 to 22 could transition into the Ballard Green space where the alternative high school is now. And we would subsequently be looking for a space for the alternative high school, which is really what we're doing at this point. So in our search for an accommodating space, we're really thinking with the lens of the alternative high school as opposed to the 18 to 22 program, because the 18 to 22 program could transition there, and then we could look for another option for AHS. And the piece that Dr. Hanaway didn't mention, but actually Angela King did, is that in addition to the core program and obviously the electives that enhance the student experience, there's the social service needs of the population that is a part of that program that is really at the core of why they need an alternative site, right? Why they can't access a large high school. And so having privacy for that is an incredibly important component of what we're looking for, in addition to having varied spaces. So if students are taking one core, that they can go to one space, and then if they were taking another elective, and then again, having community spaces as well. And so in our search, we're looking for something that meets all of those needs. And Dr. Hanaway touched upon it briefly, is that we do have a growing program. And we're fortunate, and I think our families are fortunate, that we right now are able to offer a program in our community, right? So there are, of course, children whose IEP needs or whose other needs may require a different program than what we have in our own community. Yet we do have a program here that can support our students. And as a result of that, it's a great benefit to our children that don't lose sight of where they live and their friends, et cetera. And it's also a great asset to our families. In addition to that, if we were to find a space where it meets the needs of our children primarily, also allows for the program to grow if it can grow. And that's a real, I think it's a real issue that we're having right now, is when we're thinking about students and what their needs are, can our space really hold them and have the experience be appropriate, is a question that is definitely a part of the team's mind as they're thinking about program design or program selection for students. And then, of course, there's always the option, if we pick the right space, then if we happen to have a space in a particular year, that we could offer that to other communities who may be looking at a specially designed program that could be similar to what we're offering. And of course, that would be at a tuition base, but that's really over here in terms of the priorities. So really today, our goal was to provide the board with an update and certainly the public as to what we're thinking about in terms of the 18 to 22 program and the alternative high school. As Dr. Hanaway said, if we're in the position where we have to continue next year in the spaces that we're in, ultimately, we'll have to. But at the end of the day, our goal is not to have that happen. And so we'll continue our search and continue to keep this board. And really, it's a partnership with the town. There's an added layer here in that the town does support our facilities. And so for the board's knowledge, we've been communicating with our first selectman in a small committee for several months. This isn't necessarily new, but finalizing or solidifying where the growth would be or the needs of our kids, I think is really bubbling up to saying, okay, we're not gonna be able to do this much longer. And so that communication or that partnership is continuing to happen. We had a meeting later this week. I think it's still scheduled to go on. And so we'll keep the board updated, if not in the superintendent's report, as an opportunity for discussion as we move along.
I could just add one thing that I failed to add before. The reason why, dovetailing Susie's point, the reason why Ballard Green and the one-room schoolhouse would be appropriate for the transition program is that those students aren't taking multiple classes at the same time. So those students have completed their high school requirements and they are doing more group and individual services, but we also often don't have all students in the program actually on site at the same time, because they're on community trips and they're doing a lot of job site hours. So it really allows the communal space is really what they need and what they're looking for. Whereas for the alternative high school, it's not as beneficial right now.
And from there, we'll take questions if there are any.
Liz?
Thanks. I don't know who's on the committee with Rudy and the first selectman, but do we have any private landlords or anything with all the office space changes that are happening? I just wonder if any of those buildings back by 38 Grove or anything like that might be a possibility. That
38 Grove.
Tried it
I
already.
probably should take back the word. I should probably take back the word committee. Not exactly a committee. It's a small group of people that came together.
Liz, did you follow me and Susie to 38 Grove?
No,
You were at A, B, and C.
So Liz, that's actually been the work that we've done independently and then certainly have as part of our dialogue. So realtor.com, when you think that I'm surfing the web or looking at the Instagram for REPS, I'm actually not. I am on realtor.com a lot. So we've actually, we've pulled all of the open spaces that are available, but to be fair, we're thinking outside the box as well, right? So, some of the ideas that we're throwing out there are for churches or temples that may have spaces that are no longer utilized for CCD or religious classes in some sort, or those options. Yeah. We've looked at spaces that you just described, 38 ABC, lots of different spaces that just haven't been leased. And obviously life is a little bit different now and people are working from home more than they're using those spaces. And to be fair, we do have a couple of spaces that are exciting, but there is a cost associated with those spaces that right now we need to sort through what that would actually look like on the town, Board of Ed, et cetera. And again, just planning and zoning and making sure that it meets all the needs of an arm of the school system. We're very fortunate because we have a program in district that really does serve a population of kids that may not otherwise be served in our community. And so we're very fortunate to that end. So now finding a space that really provides them the experience that they deserve is the next challenge. But we are doing the work that you just described. Outside of a committee, but with a small group of people. We'll continue to do that. No, it was me, not you. We'll continue to do that and keep the board updated. But if anyone has any leads, anyone has ideas, things that we perhaps haven't thought about, but we've thought about, just as another example is, could we share a space? So for example, could we use the space during the day that someone perhaps could use in the evening and is underutilized? But to be fair, that has had its own set of challenges with the current alternative high school space because it is utilized in the evening. There's privacy issues. We really want to protect the dignity of our kids, their privacy. all of that. And so there's taking down a school and putting up another, it doesn't, but we've thought about those types of options because really that's a cost effective, right, for two groups that may be struggling with the costs associated. But I'm sure that this group and other groups have ideas that we haven't thought about. And so I would encourage anyone to reach out to Dr. Hanaway or myself and, give us something to noodle on.
Thank you.
And also Mr. Marconi has been helpful in pointing out some spaces that weren't necessarily listed, but were also available. So it's not just in realtor.com, but also, kicking tires and asking questions. And when it comes down to that rent, that's going to be an interesting question for the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen to talk through as to where that rent bill goes. Other questions, comments?
The only other piece, just I think that's, and it's not necessarily part of the dialogue in terms of the experience, but I think that there is something to be said about the cost savings that comes from keeping our kids in District 2. And so you kind of allude to that, right? Naturally, if we're not sending kids out, we're keeping them in. But those costs relative to the cost of rent are incredibly far larger. So the program is so incredibly important for more than the reasons that of financial, obviously, for our kids, but there is that financial piece too of the benefit to the Board of Education.
Right. No more questions. We can move on. Next item up is senior internships. Very interesting.
Okay, so this actually, I added it to the agenda on tonight because I think we don't spend enough time celebrating the good work that's happening across our schools at these board meetings and providing updates. And last year was one of those funky years that the senior internship didn't exactly go off the same way that we would have hoped. And so I asked our high school to come back tonight and give us an update on the senior internship that is slightly different, obviously, than 2 years ago, but certainly has some traction different than it did last year. So I'll turn it over to the high school.
I can hop in here just to get going. I have three people here with me. I have Jen Fostoli, one of my assistant principals. She's the senior assistant principal and really helps spearhead this program. And then two of our school counselors, Lori Brand and Stacy Marconi, who are I guess co-chairs of the committee that works to keep the senior internship program moving forward. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that they put in countless hours to keep this thing moving every year. As you can imagine, moving 400 plus kids every year is a pretty huge undertaking, and one that we think is definitely worthy, well thought out, well prepared every single year, no matter what it looks like. And so, we really appreciate the opportunity to show you how we've once again transformed it into an experience for our kids. And so without further ado, again, I'll turn it over to, I believe, Ms. Fostoli is going to start us off.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm here with our team, Ms. Marchioni and Ms. Brand, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Stacy Marchioni. I'm one of the school counselors.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Lori Brand, one of the other school counselors.
So we're going to share with you an overview of the senior internship program this evening. We're going to highlight some ways that this year is different from a traditional year, because as Dr. De Silva just shared, because of COVID, we have it's not the same program as 2 years ago, but we like to call it a hybrid version of our program, and we're still able to provide our seniors with a very important opportunity. And from here, I guess we can go to our slides. I don't share the slides, correct?
John Mansfield should be able to do that.
I don't believe you sent me that presentation for me to share those slides.
All right, so hang on, no worries. We'll get them.
I sent it to Cheryl.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll get it.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Are you emailing me those to me right now?
I am.
Perfect.
Susie, this must be, the silence must be pain for you.
We can talk about internship all night. We can just
Just speak amongst yourselves.
this is my baby.
I think we might need one.
Here it comes, John. And Dr. Hanaway is 100% correct in that I don't do well with awkward silence. So here it comes, John. Even though I realize it's literally 30 seconds, it feels like 30 hours for me. John, you got it? Fast, fast. There you go. Look at that.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
You can go to the next slide. So the overall purpose of the senior internship program is to provide an authentic learning opportunity for our seniors. We want to encourage them to think actively, collaboratively, and to focus on their own individual growth, and also develop the skills necessary to become productive members of their communities. The senior internship is an opportunity for students to demonstrate the skills and values that they've learned throughout their 4 years at Ridgefield High School and apply those to a workplace experience. These skills and values are outlined in our school's mission statement, which is directly connected to our district's vision of the graduate. Some of those skills include collaboration, innovation, mindfulness, individual growth, and resilience.
So last year, senior internship really did, it didn't just pivot, we really backflipped ourselves in order to give our seniors an experience. But we felt they had really lost out on so many senior experiences. And that class, they applied for their internships in December and January. So they were all set and ready to go, and then really had, the rug pulled out from them, as they did with everything, right? With proms and graduations and et cetera. So that was last year's senior class. This year's senior class has really come into young adulthood during a global pandemic, which not many people can say they have done. And so we really want to give them and empower them the opportunity to take action. They know they've seen their families go through changes. They've seen our community, businesses shut down, people out of work, healthcare workers. They've seen what their teachers have had to do in the classroom. And now is really the time where they can take a step back from going to class and doing their schoolwork and really focus on using that time to do something, to give back. And what better skill to go out into college and in the career field with than empathy? I mean, empathy truly is something they will use and need in any kind of career or education that they will move on to. So we really wanted to tie and link all of their internships to this theme of empathy.
In the past, we've traditionally just had a traditional internship with a local business for students to go to in person. Last year, we were only able to offer senior projects as an options for students. So this year, we've come up with 3 different options for students to really give them a lot of different opportunities. With the traditional internship, students are typically working for an organization like ROAR, a bank, or a classroom. With the projects that we offer with a department head, they're focusing on book studies on a pandemic, Adulting 101, career studies, creative arts, reading for pleasure. And then the hybrid option was put into place for students that maybe found an internship, but they're not able to secure 30 hours per a week with them. So then they're able to combine a self-designed project with those hours as well. So we really wanted to give them a lot of different choices and opportunities, especially because they've had so many things taken away from them, to actually have a lot of different choices to choose from. I think really makes internship a lot special this year for them.
And that number 2, those department specific options, that was really the brainchild of the leadership team last year. When we, had to, unfortunately, and really sadly, cancel internship, we wanted to give those seniors something to look forward to, something aside from just, going to class. And so the leadership team got together and each department created a project. And so those projects were quite successful, as Stacy described some of them. And so this year, the students can opt to continue to do one of those already created projects. So a lot of our students love to intern in the local community. And Susie, Liz, if you want to get to know Ridgefield, you should shadow us as we visit our interns on our intern visit days, because we are all over Ridgefield and it is so much fun to see these, these kids who show up to school every day and they're like slippers and sweatpants, and suddenly they're working at Fairfield County Bank or at an attorney's office. They're in classrooms from pre-K and daycares up through the middle schools. They love going back to their favorite kindergarten classroom. And when you see an 18-year-old boy sitting on a tiny chair and reading a story to a kindergarten classroom, like you melt, because it is really just a full circle experience. And so many of our organizations in town, Founders Hall, Parks and Rec, Boys and Girls Club, they rely on our interns. They look forward to our internship. The fire department internship is one of the most competitive internships we have. Stacy, I don't know how many applicants we get, and Jerry Myers has turned it over to us because he has such a hard time choosing, because they're just incredible, amazing students who want to give back and ride along with the fire department. So it's really such an asset to our town. And just to see these students working really hard, through May and June is just a sight to be seen. And I know, a lot of the board members, I'm sure you've seen this. It's great. The community organizations really rely on our students to be the experts in terms of social media, marketing to the teen and young adult population. It's just their energy, their creativity is, you'll see it all through town. It's fantastic.
So the best part about internship is that not only can students be involved in local internships, they can also be involved in the outside internships as well. And we've had some great relationships with these companies for over the years. We've been so grateful to be able to have many different Fortune 500 companies and nonprofit businesses. These businesses reach out to us each year and ask when our interns are going to be available, like, do you have interns? So they really take pride in our RHS students working for them. They rave about how professional they are, how our students commit to their time in internship, and really use all of the skills that they have learned from the classroom and take them into that business opportunity.
And to make a connection to the counseling presentation from earlier this evening, many of our students, if not the majority of our students, really look to go into an internship that is an extension of their learning over their 4 years at the high school. And our counselors do an amazing job supporting our students who want to have an opportunity where it's a continuation of maybe a love or an interest, and they're able to provide connections and opportunities for the students to continue their interests. And sometimes it's, do they want an internship in a particular business or area to see if this is exactly what they want to do, if they want to continue to major in that area. With the CTE departments, the career and technical education, when you look at those areas, business, family and consumer sciences, technology, how that's written on the state level for those areas, they have specific, clearly identified pathways. And we do have internships that are a continuation of those pathways. And then hopefully in the future, as the counseling department expands in their development of programming, the internship really would be that, that transition component or that last component of their high school education. So all internships are traditionally, it's the last 4 weeks of the year. They're supervised and it's unpaid work. As described in previous slides, there is flexibility this year specifically because of COVID. So traditionally, all of our interns will go physically to a workplace, but because of COVID, we added the project option for our seniors, or they can do a hybrid option if they can't find a business that has enough hours for them in the week. So all of our interns are supposed to be interning for 30 hours a week, or this year completing their project for 30 hours a week. Each intern needs to complete a weekly journal entry and those are reviewed by their faculty advisors or faculty mentors. All of our students who successfully complete the program will receive a 0.25 credit or a quarter credit on their transcript. All of the internship sites that we do use are all vetted by our program committee to make sure that they are a viable workplace for our students. All of our students are welcome to participate if they're in good academic standing. This includes their Ridgefield's Alternative High School and Ridgefield High School. Over the past few years, we have done a few different culminating activities. For example, I would say over 5 years, or about 5 years ago, we did the internship fair. The past few years, we looked at the e-portfolios, and we also used to do exit interviews as well. So this year, we're looking to combine those three and be creative and hopefully use some sort of web-based platform. It hasn't been solidified yet, but those are the ideas that we're throwing around right now.
So our interns, our program in 2019, we had 263 unique internship sites, with over 95% of the class participating in this 30-hour-a-week, month-long experience, which does make the Ridgefield High School Senior Internship Program the largest and longest internship program in Fairfield County. And we're really proud of that because it really gives our students such a unique opportunity to spend their last month of their education really deeply diving into a work experience. It's not just that they're job shadowing. It's not that they're going, for a couple hours to see what someone's doing. They become part of the staff. They become part of the company. And it's amazing whether they're working at Henny Penny Farm, and I saw a student help a rabbit give birth, a few years ago, or they are, they really become an assistant teacher in a classroom, which is something that takes time, and we give them that time. Our interns form lifelong relationships with the mentors at their sites. We hear over and over again that these interns are getting hired to stay on for the summer. They're getting hired to come back over their long winter break in college. And this really can go on their resume as a real job, which I think is incredibly special and incredibly unique to Ridgefield High School. So that really concludes our presentation. We are happy to take any questions, and we are looking forward to a couple more weeks before our interns leave our nest.
Thank you. Who's got the first question? Margaret.
Thank you all. Yeah, it's good to hear what you're doing for many reasons. I love this program. I've loved it for my oldest graduated 8 years ago. So the program has been really great for a lot of students I've seen going through. And I really appreciate the flexibility and the options that you're giving the students given COVID and stuff. One question I had, and this is based, I guess, just on my experience from prior, that, and Lori, I think you mentioned that 95% of the students take advantage of this program. What about the other 5%, or what are the options for students? Are there certain students who this might not be a good fit for, or why might they choose not to do it? Just curious.
Sure. So our main priority is making sure every student in the senior class graduates. So the reason a student may not go on internship is if a student is behind in meeting their graduation requirements, then Jen and the counselor will really work out a plan with that student to spend that time really doing the work that needs to be done to complete their graduation requirements. So a student who's not passing all of their classes at the time of internship will hold them back so they can really spend that time making sure they do get that work done so they can walk across that stage and graduate. Occasionally we have a student who would prefer to stay in class. They would just, would prefer to continue to go to their classes. And that is certainly, allowed. But by and large, students who are eligible for internship will go out on internship.
And students do choose, again, not a lot, do choose not to go on internship. So it's not as if you're a senior in the building, that means you're not passing your classes. So yes, there are the students who aren't passing their classes are not allowed to go. And as Ms. Brand just shared, we create individualized plans for these students to get them to graduation. But there are students who just choose to go to classes for the remainder of their year.
Thank you. And I wonder if might there be, sometimes COVID has given us many opportunities to look at things differently. And I just wonder some of the options that you've coming up to deal with the situation that we're in now, if you see that potentially being options for the future in terms of these program department projects and stuff. So is that something you've considered for the future, or?
I think it's something we can definitely consider. Some of these projects that these students are doing are actually really impressive. Students can also design their own internship project as well, and they propose that to their faculty advisor. So we actually have some really creative and innovative students that are proposing a particular senior project. So it's definitely something to consider, and that's something that we will discuss as a committee and as a school next year.
Right. In the past, so let's go back. I've been doing this program, 15 years. So 12 years ago, I guess, we had students doing independent projects, and they would do things like they would be in a band together, or they would want to write a novel. And the committee really had a lot of long, hard conversations about our thoughts on that. And really, one thought is it's very hard to teach yourself to write a novel. So they would say something like, well, I found a mentor. It's an author who's a friend of my aunt who lives in Belgium, who, is going to conference call with me once a week. And so for the purpose of this experience, we've all had internships, right? We all went through college, and that's really the first step in the career. It's not that you write the great American novel without working in a publishing house or without working, in some sort of business or industry. And so the thought really was, no, you need to be in an environment with other people, from the ground up, really learning how to do that job and how to have that professional experience. There's a place absolutely for creativity. It just, for the purposes of this experience in this internship, we really wanted students sort of working in a more formalized work environment. But again, the world is changing, right? So I think this year will be a great year to see how those projects work out, and what our faculty, what our teachers are seeing from the students, and go from there.
And I guess the shift there would be, if we do move forward looking at more allowing projects in a traditional year, we would lean on our faculty mentors more. And we have to really consider that, considering our teachers are still teaching. So just that time, splitting time between being a mentor as well as the time spent in your classes. So that's a consideration.
Other questions? None? Well, I haven't had a student go through the high school yet, but this is something that I'm very much looking forward to. I'm glad that we have it. Very happy to hear it, just how many people take advantage of it. And thank you very much for the update.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Next up tonight is an update on ESSER 2 funds, elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. Who's going to be leading this?
I'll take that one. So this is actually very brief. Just I wanted to memorialize for the Board of Education. The ESSER 2 grant was applied for with those 4 categories. I've spoken to them briefly in my superintendent's report. They're on the memo. The first priority, academic supports, learning loss, learning acceleration and recovery. The second one, family and community connections. The third, school safety, social, emotional well-being of the whole student and of our school staff. And the fourth is remote learning, staff development, and the digital divide. So we wrote that grant for the amount that's $437,591. We received approval of that grant, and you've heard me communicate publicly here, and actually just on Saturday when I was asked how summer school was going to be paid for, I shared that in the months of July and August, these are the funds that would be utilized. Hopefully we'll have some left over to take care of students' needs throughout the year, whether that's before or after school within those 4 priorities, or possibly even next summer. We also know that we're expected an ESSER 3 amount. I have not received an official memo from the State Department of Ed of what that ESSER 3 amount is. There's lots of separate distinct documents that are saying this is about the allocation, a little bit over $1 million. From what I understand, the priorities are the same. And so that would allow us to continue extending supports for kids. I have also heard as of recent that there'll be some competitive grants that might be available for school districts to apply for extending the learning day and or summer opportunities for students. If and when we see those, we'll take advantage of applying. We may not be a priority in terms of receiving them, but we will take advantage of applying. So the grant was written, it was approved. I do have just a small listing of some of what is planned for in terms of activities of the ESSER funds outside of before, after school or summer sessions, curriculum writing, staff development on social emotional learning, again, linked to all of the priorities that we already have, nothing new there, and parent workshops and presenters. So as we see the needs of our families, whether that's understanding the social emotional needs of kids in this environment and or the developmental gaps that might be seen or they might be seeing at home, hopefully having an opportunity to offer parent sessions. But we'll collect some feedback before we just plan for those. But those are some of the activities that we've set forth with the State Department of Ed in terms of what our goals would be. And I'm glad to take any questions that anyone might have.
Any questions on the ESSER II funds? No? Okay, we can move on to the next item up, item E, teacher non-renewals. Do I have a motion?
Okay. I move that the Board of Education approve notification to Tracy Avery, Janine Gonzalez, Lindsay Lucchesi, Jillian Pandolfino, Caitlin Priest, and Alina Rampola of non-renewal of their contracts of the close of the 2020-21 school year, and that the superintendent of schools is directed to advise such persons in writing of this action.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Margaret, thank you. All those in favor of approving the motion? 8 in favor, that's unanimous. Thank you. And moving on to annual healthy food certification, HFC statement for the 2021-22 school year. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education accept the healthy food certification statement for July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, stating that the Ridgefield School District will not comply with the Connecticut nutrition standards.
Do I have a second? Okay, thank you. Questions, comments? Kathleen?
I've understood in the past why we need to do this. I'm just wondering, under COVID, and if we continue for next year, a lot of this was because of concession food and booster club food and all of this. Are we doing that? And is it going at cross purposes? I just want to be clear. I mean, I understood why it was done in the past, although it goes against my first inclination. But are we going to be able to be selling food piece by piece in the next year?
The problem that whether we do or we don't, the state requires us to have a motion one way or another and file it with them for next year, regardless if we do or don't. If we don't take a stance, we have to follow and comply with the rules, even if we start to have food that is sold or beverages that are sold outside of school hours, and that would handicap us.
Okay, I just wanted to, because I know the world is a little bit different now, and I wanted to be clear about that, particularly in terms of food services. Thank you.
Maybe if we knew how the rest of the next year was going to go, then we could go away from this. But I think it seems like we should maintain that flexibility for another year. Anyone else? Any other questions? All in favor of the motion as written? Please raise your hands. That's 8. That's unanimous. Thank you. And moving on to the financial report ending March 31st, 2021.
I'll take that as well. There, well, typically there's not a lot of changes month to month with the financials, and they're pretty self-explanatory. So instead of boring you every month with financials, I'd like to just highlight a few of the changes that occur as we begin our final quarter for the fiscal year. It's around this time that we begin our year-end review of all of our accounts, including closing any of our purchase orders that are no longer needed. One shift you will see next month is moving of the unbudgeted COVID expenses off of a single account and realigning it with the department that those expenses had occurred from. This is needed as we prepare the accounts for the state reporting. We do a state reporting at the end of every fiscal year, and we need to code all of those expenses in order for them to fit into that state report. It's also at this time that you'll start to begin to see transfers as we align expenditures with the needs. I'm currently projecting that there'll be some savings in a few of our accounts, and there will be overages in others. Hence, there'll be some transfers. It's important to note that much of the savings that I am currently projecting are due to variations caused by the pandemic. And under a normal year, much of this that you're seeing would not have materialized. Due to the district needs of the technology department as well, this unique year, I have added the technology as part of the body of my report so that I can keep you updated on the changes that are occurring in that department. Are there any specific questions on any of the transfers? I mean, on any of the financials?
No questions on the financials for March 31st? Let's take it to a vote. All those in favor of approving the financial report ending March 31st, please raise your hands. That's 8 unanimous again, thank you. And now we can move on to the transfers. Transfer policy and transfers.
I'll start it off, Jonathan, if that's all right.
Sure.
At the Budget and Finance Committee, Budget Finance and Operations Committee, it was mentioned a larger discussion on transfers should occur with the full Board of Education. So before you tonight is a memo to help with this discussion, along with the transfer policy itself, 3160, and the list of transfers for your approval tonight.
And the reason for this coming to the full board in this manner is because there was some lively conversation at the committee around the volume of the transfers as well as the rationale for the transfers. So always at the end of each year, where most of our transfers hit, budgets are written pretty much 18 months in advance of this kind of expenditure. So by that very nature, there's always going to be more transfers towards this, trailing end of the year. But there were some questions about how we bundle transfers and what would really meet that threshold that comes before the board. That's why I asked to have the policy put in front of us as well, so we can have any questions or answer any questions or even discuss any changes that we feel might be necessary.
Yeah, just to add on to that, Jonathan, as part of that committee, my perspective was and continues to be that the reason there are so many transfers at the end of the year isn't just because the budget is made 18 months in advance. It's because the budget is a fixed amount and we want to use it up. And I have some concerns with that approach. I realize that the schools have full discretion and I trust our school administration. However, I do think it's just because you have it, you shouldn't have to spend it. And so there's a broader strategic discussion around, are these things that were on a list that simply weren't funded because the budget was at a certain amount? Or are they new things that we came up with because we had a little money left over in one category, so we put it towards another without that discussion? And or are some of these items broken down such that they don't reach the threshold of approval, but really should be bundled differently? And, I do have some, we all know that if you have money and you're compelled to spend it, you're going to. And so perhaps there's an opportunity here to rethink the way the policies are written, both for us as well as what we can roll over. But we shouldn't have to be in a rush to spend everything in the last quarter of the school year just because we lose the money if we don't. And that's something that I think we really need to address strategically and say, are we sort of forcing this amount of transfers to happen at the end of the year by the way we've written these policies? And are our taxpayers the ones that are, yeah, maybe our schools are benefiting, but there's not as much scrutiny on these line items at this point in the year as there are during the budget setup process. And that seems to me a little bit of a challenge. So I'll just leave it there, but that was, that was the crux of many of the points made during the committee meeting as well.
No, and Liz, that's your thoughts on this matter is why I thought we should bring it to the table to hear your voice on that. I feel differently than you on some of this. I feel like the town approves a certain amount to put towards education, and it's our job to use that money towards education. And we would return money if and when we get to the point where we say, well, we're pretty much done educating our kids and we have $1 million left over. The lines that really get funded, and again, this is just my opinion, but the lines that are getting funded in some of these transfers are the same lines that tend to get hit first when there are budget freezes. We had 3 years of those in a row. And so some of those kinds of materials are the first things that get cut when times are tough. And so when there is a possibility of getting them back into funding, I'm in favor of them, but I guess there's 9 members on this board and I'm just one of those voices.
Yeah, and the way other places do that is they have what's called a risk and opportunity list. That's actually a group of unfunded things that go, and they're already prioritized. And so there's no discussion, right? It's just an easy way to be very transparent about what is to come. If we have another dollar, here's where it's going to get spent. But when we start to think about the fact that we need another location for our alternative high school, for instance, perhaps some of these monies could have been harvested for rent for that, instead of worrying about it after we've spent on a new 3D printer or whatever. Not that those aren't needs, but I do think from a strategic planning perspective, we shouldn't have to worry about rent for our AHS students if we've got extra funds. And that's where I think we need to, my opinion is, and I maintain it, that the community should weigh in on this as well, probably, that perhaps there's a better process here.
That's understood. And my comment on the rent, by the way, was more about the fact that the town provides the space for 4,500 students, and we shouldn't be in a position where, but for these other 20 students, the town does not provide the space, and that comes out of your operating budget. That was where I was coming from on that. But I saw a couple of hands. Kathleen.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that at the end of the school year, if monies are not spent, they do not stay in our budget for contingencies, such as something like funding the A school, but they do go back to the general fund. So in some ways, that doesn't allow us that kind of flexibility.
That's a good point. We can't use any of this year's funds for next year's.
Well, and that's what I'm suggesting. Perhaps we go back to the town and start to think about that, because maybe that's not a great process for our schools either, because we're forcing them to spend any money. Otherwise, it goes to a different budget. That to me is illogical.
I think you will find, I can't speak for anybody, but I would assume that you'd have unanimous consent on this board that a carryover account that is not purely tied to COVID-related expenses, although that was a nice first step in that journey this year to get to the point where we did have a carryover account for one item for 1 year. But that is certainly a discussion that we should continue to have with the town and the Board of Finance, because at this point, state statute allows for up to 2% of any year's budget to be put into a carryover account for future contingencies. We do not have that in Ridgefield, but that would certainly make the whole conversation different.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the state has a rainy day fund, the town has a rainy day fund, the school should have a rainy day fund. I mean, because we're just encouraging these transfer. We're not rewarding excellent use of funds to some degree.
While I vehemently agree with you, I do think these transfers are a good use of funds, and they are for this year's learning. So I'm comfortable with them. Is there any other conversation about these transfers, anyone's in particular, or about the policy itself? Kathleen? Okay.
Jonathan, I agree with you at this point that, but Liz, the point is, going forward. First of all, the first thing Jonathan said is this budget is made 18 months in advance, and we can't anticipate what's going to be happening in terms of transfers. It would be lovely if we could, in advance set up, where we're going to fund, because we've always had to cut all the things that we would prefer to have in the school system. So but I think at this point, I feel comfortable with where it is now. Maybe going forward, we could begin to look at how do we prioritize that. I just feel uncomfortable prioritizing that 18 months in advance. And it could be an ongoing conversation as we get closer to the end of the year.
It may be helpful, Kathleen, to know, and how we present this either through the curriculum committee or through our budget, finance, and operations committee, or through, quite frankly, the way that we present to the Board of Education, is we do internally do that, right? So now we have the technology needs. That's a great example because that's recent. You heard Dr. DeSantis speak about the high priority, the moderate, and the can wait a little bit, right? And so as we have additional funds available to us, that's exactly what we're doing, is we're pulling from that. As long, again, the policy or the policy and practice is that we're spending funds from this year on this year. So we have to be sure that our students still have the ability to access them. And so we are pulling from that internal list of priorities. Okay, where are our needs, what's most essential, and what could wait a little bit if we needed to wait a little bit.
And these items were probably on each principal's wish list at the beginning before their budget got up to our level. So, and we can look back at that. And we did ask for that a couple of years ago to make sure that there was documentation around what was asked for but not put in. So we should be able to rely on looking back at those. Any other questions or comments on the transfers, either as a whole or individually?
No, oh, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm agreeing, very much that the town approved a budget for the schools. And this is as the needs are identified through the year. Again, they change from 18 months prior. And so the priorities will change. So we don't need money for transportation for field trips that didn't happen, but we do need laptops or Chromebooks. So that is a use of the money that I completely agree with. It's a valid transfer. I think that to Liz's point, I think there is some room in the policy that where we can tighten up that approval process. I think there is a risk that there will be that there could be $10,000 transfers that happen in order to avoid the $50,000 pre-approval from the board perspective. I think obviously we could discuss this in committee outside of this meeting, but where perhaps an aggregate. So it's not only per incident, but in aggregate, a transfer from a particular area or a transfer into a particular area does require board approval prior to that being authorized. I think there is some room for that within the policy, but still keeping with the spirit of the transfers of needs changing as the year develops since the budget was planned.
Thank you. So we could ask for policy committee to review and bring forward potential revisions to these policies going forward. But for tonight, are we ready to vote on the transfers before us? All those in favor of approving the transfers? I think we're unanimous. All right, thank you very much. It's 8 to none. And we can move on to the update on the unbudgeted COVID-19 expenses.
Great. Not a lot has changed on the expenses as we were winding down. We don't have the purchases that we had at the beginning of the year. Most of the changes you see on the report itself is due to salaries. As the salaries occur on a monthly basis, the information is updated. The one thing I will bring to your attention is on the second page under food service. That number has not changed from last month, and that is because the food service billing is running about a month behind right now. We are issuing covering the cost of the expense, but this money we're receiving from the state is slow in getting here, and we don't want to pay a bill that we don't have the funds sitting in the bank for. So we are just running about a month behind on that. So you'll see that get caught up. I believe we were able to capture all of the activity right after this report was pulled together. So we missed it by just a few days. So you'll see that change in next month. At this time, it's just the 2 grants that are still on our reimbursement area. If we get to the ESSER 2 money that comes in and there's any ESSER 2 money that's applied to this year, I'll add that to the list as well. And then on the very last page, it's just been updated with the estimate as to what could possibly be additional funds as we go through the rest of the few months that we have at school.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on the update on COVID-19 expenses? There was a question at the Board of Finance table as to whether we could track or should have tracked COVID-19 savings. But I don't know how that would have been actionable or how that would be used in the future. So just take that for what it's worth. Anything else on COVID-19, or we can move on? Okay, thank you, Don.
Jonathan, I'm not sure if there was a vote for the financials.
I believe there was, but I can go back. I think we were 8 to 0 on financials, but I'll do it again just to make sure.
I apologize.
All in favor of approving the financial report ending March 31st, 2021? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 16-0 on the financials.
Thank you.
Okay, items of information. The enrollment report is up next.
Yes, as you know, each month you'll see what our current enrollment numbers are. As typical, there are ins and outs at all levels, but you will see since the last board meeting in March, we do have a net increase of 3 students. I would not say there was a major driver, but if there's any questions, please let me know.
So that is the highest number of the year, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So if you look at the beginning from September, there is a steady increase is our general pattern since the beginning of the year.
Except for the high school.
Yeah, I'm talking about the total, you're right.
Sean?
I know you said there's no major driver. Are some of these kids coming back from homeschooling that weren't on our radar? Are they New Yorkers moving in? We just don't know.
Do you mean for the 3 students this month?
Just in general since September. I know we had some kids that were pulled out for homeschooling. Have they returned? We were expecting some of them to.
So those go through the curriculum department, and actually because that position was not filled, it was primarily me. I have not seen returns from homeschool, Sean. So, and in terms of new registrations, Karen, you may know that a little bit better than I do, but if anything, we have seen a number of students moving out of district. that are holding on for a little bit longer as and we know that because of the real estate sales, right? So that's not a on the call. But we have seen a number of students that have transitioned out of district, but are, either asking for permission to stay so long as they're in the state of Connecticut and we have the ability to do so. There are times in which we approve those requests. But in terms of a general pattern, Sean, I don't think that we're seeing that quite yet.
It does seem like there's a bit of a pattern in pre-K, having gone from 43 in November to 61 now.
Yeah, we talked about that I think at the last time we shared enrollment. That's
Right.
also based off of the timing when the children can enroll
Right.
into the preschool program. So that is a number that the board should expect to look that way each year, just around this time, just based on the time in which children change over to their birth year.
That's the entire change for this past month. Okay, we can move on to the staffing report.
Okay, so you also receive a monthly report that shows the retirements or resignations that we received since the last board meeting, or any new hire. So if there's any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer those as well.
No questions? Okay, we can move on to meeting timeline. We are through budget season pretty much now, except for the referendum. Next week, we have a policy meeting and a curriculum meeting. And then our next regular meeting, we have a couple of items. We've got, before the meeting itself, we have our annual superintendent's evaluation on the 10th at 6 p.m. And then that night, we'll probably also try to get on the beginning of our discussion around open choice, which we have been remiss in getting on, but we have had very, very full, very busy meetings in the meantime. And the rest, you can see the rest of the year laid out. Again, if you see something that is not on there that you would like to be, just shoot me a note. We can discuss where best to find a home for it. So now we can move on to, unless there's questions, correspondence to the board, starting with public comment.
We have no public comment this evening. And the correspondence report. We received 4 emails since our last regular Board of Education meeting. 1 email regarded a volunteer opportunity. 2 emails advocated for healthy start times for all Ridgefield Public School students. And 1 email regarded the budget. And that's all.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, we made short work of a long agenda. Thank you all for the hard work on that. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Kathleen, thank you. There's a second? Liz? All in favor of adjourn? It's unanimous. Everything has been unanimous tonight. Thank you all. Have a great evening, and we'll see you in